Welcome back. We're not going to be doing an episode of the Adventure Files today, because it's October. And what better way to start October than to talk about everybody's favorite franchise? I'm being sarcastic. But hey, I've talked about a film series before with the old Resident Evil things, and I thought maybe let's talk about these. I do have the full series here. So far, here they finally announced a 7th one. We have here the first one, the second one, you could tell because it has a 2 on it. We have the third one, you could tell because it's got a 3 on it. We have the 4th one, also because it's got a 4 on it. We have here the 5th one, but it might be a little bit confusing. There's no 5 on here, but I promise you, this is the 5th one. And then here's the 6th one. Again, this might be a little bit confusing. There's no number 6 on here. But it says the Ghost Dimension. And the Ghost Dimension obviously feels like a 6th film in a spooky franchise, because you have to go to a Ghost Dimension. And here's the 6th one. And I have seen these plenty of times. I've seen the first 4 here plenty of times. I've seen them at least 4 times each. I've seen this one at least twice, and I've seen this one only once. So if we're going to talk about films that I remember the most, I remember the first 4 almost like the back of my hand. But the way these films are filmed, I suppose you could say they're quite forgettable in a lot of ways, but then I'm also a very forgetful person. So when you combine forgettable films with a forgetful person, you have an experience that you could re-experience for the first time multiple times, because they're just so forgettable and you're so forgetful that you can always watch these films and get a fresh perspective. If only. I remember these 4 at least, because they were at least somewhat memorable, and this one is actually pretty good as well. This one I have only seen once, and I remember absolutely nothing about it. I remember nothing about it. Nothing. Apparently it's got something to do with the Ghost Dimension. For the first time, you will see the activity. And I guess they dug a hole in the wall. We saw the activity in this one. I don't know why they say for the first time you will see the activity here. I guess probably because it's CG activity and all that stuff. Here, you could forgive it, because the activity here is all very, very low budget. I believe this film only had about a $5,000 budget, or was it $50,000? No, I think Blair Witch had $50,000. This was like a shoestring budget. This is the film filmed in somebody's house. And the actors here are the actual names of the actors who took part. Mika here, and you see how forgettable they are. I don't remember her name. I can look on the back, and maybe her name is on here. And it does not tell me her name. So maybe it tells me her name on here in the back here. Christy, there you go. Alright, no, that's the sister's name. Christy is the sister's name. What the fuck is her... You see how forgettable these are, because Katie, there you go, here we go, thank you, 3rd movie to the rescue. Alright, Katie and Mika. I remember Mika's name because Katie seems to scream Mika's name so many times that it drills his name into your head. You will remember Mika's name if you watch this film, because you hear it plenty of times. Katie is just there, she's there. Mika has a memorable character. He's the skeptic, and then when he realizes that the house might actually be haunted, he reacts how you or I might react and go like, wow, that's cool, let's try to piss him off and fucking see what he could do. And then the ghost starts slamming doors. He's like, oh, cool, man. And then he starts doing dangerous things, and he's like, oh shit, I might have pissed him off. And but I might go through these again, rewatching them to get a fresh perspective and maybe make a new series about them. Remember from the barest necessities that say that this is a very by itself film about two people living in a spooky house, and maybe the wife here, Katie, is cursed from some sort of spooky thing going on with her family, and Mika's just the dude who just happened to marry into the insanity. And then it ends in his untimely demise. Spoilers. Spoilers for the movie. The house was haunted. There is paranormal activity going on. But what you could say that this film did really well is what it could do with the budget of a shoestring budget, man. Let me clarify just how low of a budget this film had. Have you went to college? Well, if you ever thought of going to college, going for a full year would probably cost you more than what they spent on this film. That's crazy, right? It looks so good. It's found footage type and archetype before it became super duper tired. This was that film that made a phenomenon, right? It was a shoestring budget of like $5,000, and it made like 100,000, maybe 200,000, maybe a couple million. Either way, this thing exploded with their profits, man, and they realized, hey, we could spend piss on a film, and if it's good, we can make a crap ton back. So they had to make a sequel. And in the sequel, it's about a larger family. It's a family now, and this one is just a couple in the house, just these two people, and we see Katie's got a sister, and she shows up, Christy, and her husband or whatever, they show up, for a pool party or something, and then they go away, and it's just these two for the majority of the film. In this one, it's a whole family. We have Christy, the younger sister, we have her husband, we have the husband who married into who Christy married into, but the husband has a daughter from another marriage. The daughter is not Christy's daughter. The daughter is the husband's daughter from another marriage, and I think the mother's dead or something. But there's the daughter who is primarily the main focus of the film. You'd think it'd be on Christy, but it's mostly on the daughter, whose name I can't remember. And they have Christy and her husband have a child together. They're both childs. So she gave birth to a child. I believe his name is Hunter, the first male-born son in the family. And then spooky stuff happens here. I believe this is a prequel to this film. I believe it's a prequel, because the spookiness that happens here, we see that Katie's still alive, and then we see that Katie shows up for a party or some shit in this film, and we go like, oh, isn't Katie supposed to be all spooked out, and isn't Mika supposed to be dead? But Mika's still alive in this, so it's like a prequel. But then you see that Katie starts talking about spooky stuff happening at her house in the middle of this film, and you think, oh, are they happening simultaneously? And then then spooky stuff happens, and at the end of this film, Katie, who is now at the end of this film happens before the end of this film, but the beginning of this film happens before the beginning of this film. Isn't that complicated? Well, now we have Katie, who has become spooked out with the spookiness, who comes in to kill everybody in this family, except for the daughter, who is out at a party or something. She was out at the time. And the husband dies, the sister dies, and the dog dies. And then something in the pool happens, and then the child gets kidnapped by the sister, who is now spooked out with spookiness. And then the film ends. And you want to know what happens with the spooked out spookiness. Well, you don't get your hopes up, because in the third film, the best one in my opinion, this one is a prequel to the prequel sequel to the original. And this film happens in the 1970s. I think the 70s. This one happens in the 70s. And this guy has these cameras. It's still found footage. That's the one thing that most of these films, I think even the Ghost Dimension still tried to do it, that's the one thing the found footage, this thing has been consistent with, is found footage. But the budget got progressively bigger with the effects and all that stuff, the further down you go. But at least in this one, they still had a kind of a shoestring budget. But they did some interesting things with this one in the area of, they're using 70s equipment, recording equipment. At least you think that they are. They might still be using modern equipment to make it look like it's 60s, 70s equipment. But so we have the parents of the children here, or the mother, at least, of the children here, and then their grandmother, these kids' grandmothers, but the mother's mother in this. Wow, this is very confusing, isn't it? I'm not good at making sense. So let's try to go back here. We start with Katie. Don't worry about Mika. We have Katie. We have Katie's sister. These two characters are sisters, Katie and Christy. We know that much. Well, Katie and Christy are born from people that you would call their parents. And their parents are the main characters of this film. And you would realize that their parents also probably have parents. So, Katie and Christy's mother, Katie and Christy's mother, she has a mother too. And her mother is their grandmother. Right? You're with me so far. Right. So, Katie and Christy's grandmother is a spooky lady. She's a very spooky lady, and she's part of this weird witch coven. And they went and asked King Potato Head to give them money. They wanted a lot of money in exchange for the firstborn son of their family. Well, problem is, this family line has the propensity to always have daughters. They can't have sons for some reason. So the grandmother, the great-grandmother, and all the day down the line through all the spookiness, and they get money and all that stuff, and they say, oh, we'll have a son eventually. We'll have a son eventually. Keep giving us that money, King Potato Head. So they have their childs of, they have daughters, and King Potato Head is kind of upset, but King Potato Head makes friends with one of the daughters, Christy. And so we have the father who sets up VCR recording cameras. They're big, giant-ass things. You remember those things if you were a child in the 90s and your parents liked to make family memories in the 90s and then recorded your Christmas present openings and your birthdays. So they had these giant things. And then you looked in the basement of your house, of your parents' house, and you look in the storage room and you see all these blank videotapes and you think, oh, these might be from our childhood. And that's basically what this is. That's basically what this is. So, what the father's doing here is he's setting up VCR cameras to record any spooktastic things going on. But he also works as a wedding person. He videotapes weddings for a living or something like that. He videotapes events for people and he edits them together and builds a tape for the people and all that stuff. So he knows how to use this equipment, and he sets up the equipment in the daughter's house, the daughter's bedroom, Katie and Christy's bedroom, and he sets one up in their bedroom, he and the wife, and then he sets one up in the living room, and he sets it on a rotator fan. This is a very interesting way of doing things. The rotator fan, those old-ass fans that they have, the rotator cuff, whatever, well, he removed the fan part. He kept the rotator that rotates, and he put the camera on top of the rotator, so when you see the film come pointing out that way, it's rotating, and you can see one part of the film in the area in the kitchen that you see the living room over there, and it just keeps rotating and recording for about 6 hours, and the father has to replace these tapes every 6 hours. It's very tedious, but he seems to be very determined to record every aspect of this family's life. I think he might be a little whacked, but he's also like Mika. He's the 1970s Mika. This is basically the first Paranormal Activity, but done a little bit cooler, because this one actually has an interesting story going on with it. But it gets a little bit more convoluted with Grandma, who's a spooky lady, and the spookiness of the witch covens and all that crap going on. This seems to be very simplistic and a simple story that you can wrap your head around and realize that only this is a shoestring budget, but it made a lot of money. This was also a kind of shoestring budget, but a little bit more money was put into it, but it made a lot of money too, but it made less money. The first one was still a lot of money. And then this one's the same story as the second one. But I liked the third film in regards to the father was more kooky than Mika. But I can't remember his name. I can't remember anybody's name in this except for Mika. Mika was the one person I remember from, as well as Hunter. I remember Hunter because, Hunter's the kid who's the MacGuffin. He's the child, the miracle child, the son, the firstborn son that was finally born in this family for the whole ritual, for the spookiness, for the money and all that stuff that the witch coven for the spooky grandma did. At the end of this film, they go to Grandma's house to escape from the spookiness of their house because they think their house is haunted. And if they go to Grandma's house, maybe the Grandma's house may not be haunted. But then they realize, what if it's the family that's haunted? And that if they go to a hotel, the hotel becomes haunted. If they go to a trailer park, the trailer park becomes haunted. No matter where they go, it's haunted. But then you realize, well, don't these people, go out? They go out and about, to a dry cleaners or to the grocery store and things like that, and they don't see any spookiness there, right? Well, you don't have any video cameras videotaping those events, so you don't know if the spookiness is happening at the grocery store. So maybe spookiness is happening at the grocery store with them as well, but you don't have them being recorded. Whatever. So at the end, Grandma is revealed to be spooky, and Grandma kills the mother and the father, and then the two children are now spooktastic out as well. They're spookied out again, and they live with Grandma, who is all weird. And they call the spooky monster King Potato Head. They call King Potato Head Toby. I think that Christy is channeling her psychic energies into the Raimiverse, and she's talking to Tobey Maguire, but I don't know. In the fourth film, I have a soft spot for the fourth film. I really enjoyed this one. I really, really enjoyed the fourth film. I wouldn't say it's as good as the first three. It's not, but I enjoyed the fourth film. I really did. This one's set with a different family, far removed from the Christy and Katie's family. And you realize that the daughter is the main character here, and she's got parents, because, parents tend to give birth to children, and they also tend to adopt children sometimes. And there's a case of both in this film. She was birthed, and her little brother, Wyatt, was adopted. So we have a case of both scenarios happening here. So, the daughter realizes that there's something spooky going on around here. And then there's another interesting way of capturing footage in this film. They're using the Xbox Kinect and all the green dots to capture movement and motion and all that stuff at night when they're recording. And the Xbox cameras are always recording stuff, and that's all cool and kooky and all that stuff. So, Hunter's got a friend, and Hunter's friend is a child from a spooky lady. And the spooky lady ends up being, it's Katie! But she's now all spooked out after the end of this film, because this film takes place a while after these films. So Spooky Katie is their neighbor. Oh no, and Spooky Katie has kidnapped another child. And this other child's been hanging out with Hunter, and this other child's been grooming Hunter to be King Potato Head's new body, because King Potato Head wants a new body, just like this other movie I talked about the other day. Isn't the story very similar? So King Potato Head, Tobey Maguire, wants Wyatt's body. Wyatt, who is Hunter in reality. And the daughter's trying to figure out all this mystery, because this is basically Paranormal Activity 2 all over again. Because you realize the daughter is always the mystery solver. She's got to solve a mystery, and there's no dog to help them out. And they don't have a stoner best friend to help them out either. So she's solving a mystery. And then she dies. Well, she probably doesn't die. I don't know if she does at the end. She probably does. But she makes it to the end of the movie alive. It's just, you just get the idea that she probably does die. At the end of the movie, she's chasing her dad into the spooky house because, her mom is dead because something happened. Her boyfriend's dead because something happened. I think spooky, creepy Katie killed everybody. Spooky, creepy Katie killed everybody but the daughter and her father. So the daughter and the father go over to Katie's house, which is not actually her house. She's what's that word? Squatting. She's squatting in the house with the spooky kid. And then you realize there's a bunch of strange ladies hanging around this place. There's a bunch of strange ladies hanging around. She keeps running into them all over the place. It's just like the end of that one movie with King Potato Head. Well, King Potato Head's also in this movie, apparently, and he wants a child body, and it's gotta be a gun. And then she's really... the father dies, and then she runs outside, and she's surrounded by all these women, these creepy ladies who are all spooked out with spookiness, and then the film ends when she drops the camera. I get the feeling that they probably sacrificed her to King Potato Head. Then we finally make it to The Marked Ones. The Marked Ones is an interesting film. It's once again kind of like this film in that it's removed from the main family of the first three films. But this one kind of has Hunter in it still, but this one doesn't have even Hunter. It doesn't have anybody in relation in relation to these films. Except for, I think, the daughter of the second one. I think the daughter of the second one shows up in this one because they contact her and they realize, oh, crap, she survived! Let's talk to her. She might have some stories to help us with, because this guy, as you can see, he's got something wrong with his face here. Well, he gets possessed by some sort of spooky, creepy person as well, but he also seems to be mostly himself for the first major half of the movie. So he's been possessed by something, but he seems to be himself. So they go contact somebody to go like, hey, what's going on with us? And she's like, oh, something spoopy has happened, and here's some research I did about it. Now, I'm going to leave this movie now because I don't want to be in this franchise anymore. Good luck. So then this guy, he's not the main character, it's his buddy who's the main character. He's basically like the fat best friend. Well, he's basically trying to figure out what's going on. He's getting more and more creepy, he's getting more and more rude to him, and you're like, why are you being rude to me, man? And then he's like, oh, I'm being possessed, man, wow. So they go back in time. They go back in time, man. So he chases his friend back in time to the first film, and he realized that when Katie screamed Mika's name at the end of the film, it's because Katie encountered the dude from this movie, and Mika attacked the dude from this movie, and they went back in time. Who knows what's going on in this film? This is one of the movies I have to rewatch, because who knows what's going on anymore as of this film. And I couldn't tell you hide nor hair of what happens in this one. All I could tell you is that maybe there's a child Christy and Katie going on. There's more time travel shenanigans going on here. King Potato Head has a time machine. King Potato Head has a time machine. That's basically all I could tell you. I'm probably gonna have to do a in-depth look into each one of these. But I probably already told you the most about these films, so I'm probably gonna skip these four and just go right into these. I might have to rewatch this at a later date and talk about it more in depth. I probably might not get any more information than what I've already told you, though. That this guy gets possessed, he's progressively getting worse, and his best friend's trying to figure out what's going on. Then they go back in time, and Mika punches the best friend in the face. That's basically what happens. But I couldn't tell you hide nor hair of what happened in this one. I couldn't tell you anything it's just a ghost dimension. A ghost dimension there's a spooky tunnel with a bunch of children who are from witch families, and they get to stay kids through time travel shenanigans, even though they grew up in these films and then they died. But they're still children in some sort of timeline with the multiverse theory, and things get really weird and all convoluted. And by the 7th film, I think Batman would probably show up at some point in the tutu or something, because that's just how abstract and crazy things are getting in this film. And that was the Paranormal Activity saga that I've experienced. I really enjoyed the first 4. As you can see, I actually remember things that happened in the first 4. So you could probably tell that I might actually know what I'm talking about with these a little bit. And then I've seen this one at least twice, so I know that they go back in time, things of that nature. But I wouldn't recommend this one, because I might be forgetful, but I at least remember something when I watch a movie. When I watched this, I remember nothing. I remember nothing in this. There's a bunch of CGI. There was a big budget in this one for the first time, and there's a bunch of CGI going on, a bunch of creepy, crawly garbo, and it really ruined the aesthetic that the first few entries in this franchise brought to this series. If you are going to watch this, you're going to watch this only because this is number 6, and number 7 is coming out later. And you're an OCD person, you can't watch something with the number 7 on it unless you watch 1 through 6, like me. So, that's what you gotta do. You gotta watch the first 6 before you make your way to the 7th one. The first 4 are pretty easy to figure out. Well, the first one might not be pretty easy to figure out. It's just this Paranormal Activity. How are you going to tell if this is the first one? Maybe the first one probably doesn't have the number 1 on it. But then you might be able to figure out that the second one is the second one because of the 2, 3, 4. But then I have to remind you that the marked ones is the 5th one, and that the ghost dimension is the 6th one. You probably would figure that out when you watch both of them, and you realize that the 5th one is probably a little bit better than the 6th one, so that might give it away that it's probably the 5th one. Because you know how sequels get progressively worse half the time. And that's true here. This one's better than this one. This one, though, is the weird one, because I think it's better than the first 2. I think it's better. Because, you know, the ending half of this with the spooky grandma was actually scary. It was actually pretty freaky, man. And I didn't have any freaked out moments in the first 2. The 3rd one, though, really freaked me at the ending of that one. The 4th one's just a personal favorite of mine. It's a hilarious, bad film, but it's good. And then these 2 are forgettable experiences. This one's less forgettable than this one because the time travel shenanigans at the end, and then you see Mika again. Mika's back, and then he punches the protagonist in the face. And then this one's just, who the fuck knows what's happening in this one. I felt like talking about these in spooky October time because, you know, why not? And remember, be imaginative.